can actually physically drag it along to 1.16. Mind you, it does start with a really beautiful tracking shot from Bane.
It really does.
It does, yeah.
I nearly used it, except I'd already used Bob's. To about 1 minute 41.
Okay, 1:15 then.
So we start at 1:15. Okay.
1:15. If everyone can drag their little red ball on the bottom line to 1:15, and then we'll start. Okay?
Are we there? Let's do it.
Ready.
Right. 1, 2, 3, go.
Remind me again why we can't just walk up and knock on the door.
In case you haven't noticed, neither of us could pass for locals. I look like a goat herder, and you look like...
Like what?
like someone more memorable than we want to be.
Oh, nice recovery.
Yeah, thanks. Coast is clear. I'll go see if he's home. As for locals, you wait here. I'll signal her just as soon as I think it's safe to.
Excuse me, but why do I have to wait here?
Because I want to be sure he ain't holding a sharp object when you walk through the door.
I'm not afraid of him.
You're not the one I'm worried about.
I'll be on my best behavior.
Well, now see, that's what I'm actually worried about.
What we've done is we've travelled through this beautiful scene, and then we've got to the characters, and we've got what is a medium close-up, and it's often here where the dialogue commences. So we've got this nice sort of full shot where we see the full bodies of the two characters, and then we go to the medium shot of our drow lady, and we hear her dialogue. And now we're starting to get an idea of character. And there are again some beautiful camera shots in this film, and again very worthy. It's just really lovely work, and I love how the camera is saying, "Oh, this is what you need to see. This is what you need to do." And the dialogue between them is funny. But if you missed it, you're not actually missing any of the plot. So the camera is telling you what is important. The characters aren't necessarily. If that makes sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does
So
make sense.
last thing I want to look at is a film where the filmmaker has mixed some camera shots. And I'm hoping that this works, because I did copy the URL to the specific time. So in this particular film, this is Amar Wonder's film, Light a Candle for Me. And I think, although I know Amar was trying to make a kind of film that would work with just sound, I think he actually managed to do this with the camera as well, and I think it's a really good example of using some very jarring, uncomfortable angles to make us know that we're watching something that is not right, you know. So if we could set play to that to about 1 minute 15, please.
Okay, it's in the player. I'm going to give you the direct link, but we'll watch it on 3. So in about 1 minute, you say? Okay.
To about 1 minute 15.
Oh, to about. Okay. Let's go.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
I think that went to the beginning as well, didn't it?
I don't think that the time link works, so
Yeah, it's not working.
we'll just have to move it up to 1:15 like we did the last one.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay,
That's fine.
so move it to 1:15, everyone. And then start.
Yeah.
Mm.
You see how the camera focuses on the face, you know, and goes synchronic with the audio. It's yeah, it's so well done. And I miss that
I
often in the
love
cinema. Yeah.
the incorporation as a real candle. I'm pretty sure that was a real candle burning at the end.
Was
And
it
yet-
fake? Was it a real candle? And I'm still shaken up
I'm not sure.
by the film, you know, and every time I see it, I've watched it several times. It's the effect of the sound and the camera work is, yeah, can't be done better, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, I mean, he has a real feel for how to engender a mood. And
Yeah.
I think even if you watch that with the sound down, you know that something bad is going to happen. And I think you do need to be very aware of your genre. So if you're doing, like, say you've got a nice extreme wide open at the start of a countryside, and then you've got a wide of a person jogging through. If you're watching a crime genre, then 9 times out of 10 that's going to be your first victim. You know, so the camera is always telling you things that without actually telling you things, and I think that is a really nice touch.
Yeah. It is like what we talked about. It's often misused in films and series nowadays, like when somebody's spying on their victim, like a horror film or a detective, you know, somebody's stalking a woman or planning to kill her, and they're spying on her from between the bushes. The camera will do that. The camera will be between the bushes. But often that is done without it being justified to the story. And every time it throws me off. I don't know if you guys have noticed that. Some of the filmmakers, and I'm not talking
But I think the problem is it's almost like you accused me of speaking Chinese in Dorian's film last year.
yeah.
And I used to be able to order chicken chow mein in Cantonese. But once I said it, and I don't know if you're aware in Cantonese, but there's like tones. Everything's got a tone. And although I knew the sounds, I wasn't making the right tone, and apparently I was ordering chicken poop.
Hopefully that's not what you were served.
No, I was not served that. They knew what I meant. But, you know, it was like, oh, you do realise you just asked for chicken poop. And I thought, oh, no, I did not. I did not know that thing. I was so embarrassed, I'm not even going to replace it. You know, quote it here. But, yeah, so I think if we don't have a handle for that language, or if we make a film and we're not thinking about that language when we make the film, we run into that danger that sometimes I'll watch things and I'll think, oh, this is a horror film, and then it's not a horror film at all.
Yeah.
You know, it's something else, and that horror was not meant. It was an accident. The best thing to do, I mean, you can look this all up on the internet, obviously, but the best thing to do is sit down with your favourite film, watch it, and say to yourself, how long has it been since the first lines of dialogue has been used? How do I know who the main characters are? What's the camera doing? Why am I looking at the characters from this angle, or why am I looking at it from that angle? What does the over shoulder shot mean? What does looking up at a character mean, or looking down at a character mean? You know,
And using the
sorry, go on.
especially, sorry, I was just going to say, because this is making me think of Hitchcock and how he constructs scenes.
Yeah.
And he will do things like, there's a scene in The Lady Vanishes when they're on the train, and the camera is tilting very slightly, so it's looking up, at Paul Lucas, who is the villain, but the hero and heroine don't yet know. And the camera is slightly above, looking down on them, just a tilt, back and forward. It's not like an overhead shot or anything like that. And of course, because it's Hitchcock, it then turns out that the villain has been revealed, and the hero and heroine are coming out on top, but the camera has told you this guy is dangerous. These people are being trapped.
You don't feel quite comfortable. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think if you're really interested in making good machinima, if you can get a feel for how cameras work and how they talk to us as audience, I think it would really behoove us as machinimatographers. I mean, I say us. I live on a boat, so I haven't got the bandwidth to make machinimatography anymore. But I'm talking to you from the middle of a river. But it's you. You. So I'm a good kid in Arbor, sitting there at Machinima Mondays, giving everybody feedback about, I don't know that your language is quite right there, yeah. But I know the other kind of plot when I see it.
Yeah, and we all know when it's wrong, and we also, well, most filmmakers, me included, we really love our space nav, so we'll use it no matter what. We can't keep our left hand away from the space nav. Well, and sometimes it's a good thing, like the walkthrough that Dorian talked about, for the first film I made for Mosey, because it was a walkthrough, and that's why you keep sliding forwards, which isn't as easy as it sounds. But then it serves a purpose. And like one of my favorite movies, Chaos, they used to hire a helicopter for that. Now they can do it with drones. But that starts at a mountain and the camera slowly circles round. And you're straight away into the movie. We can do it with a space navigator here in Second Life. But when there's a purpose for it, and we shouldn't just do the same thing over and over again. Use the camera.
James said guilty, meaning he's in love with his space nav, which is great, because he gets the most brilliant shots, and on Designing Worlds, he does the most fantastic walkthroughs for us. Whereas I am so bad with the space nav that I just focus on getting medium shots and close shots and so forth.
Well, and then some people use, Xbox controllers. I haven't tried one yet, but I've asked. I think we have some in a drawer at work, and I just haven't found them because I'm going to try it just to see the difference.
Yeah.
Well, I do think that, one of the things we all strive to do is to just get our films a little bit more close, I suppose, close to the RL film ideas, and we could do so many different things. I mean, it was a bit like our theatre. We could throw our audience into a storm. We could take the roof off our theatre and have everybody sat in the dark. We could play so many magical games in our theatre, and we can do that in film too. And I think that we're quite blessed, really.
Yeah.
I'm going to make a suggestion, because in 6 minutes' time we have another guest who's coming to speak at the Literary Festival, Boudica Amat. And this is just such a fascinating discussion that I was going to suggest we carry it on in Machinima Monday.
Yeah, most definite. If Fakey would do us the pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah, we're coming to the top of the hour. It's
Yeah. And of course tomorrow we have Show and Tell.
We have Show and Tell tomorrow at 11, and Machinima Monday is going to be at 1 o'clock on Monday, oddly enough. So what I'm going to...
speakers and all. Every day will be interesting as today, I'm sure.
So, are you two okay with carrying this on in Machinima Monday?
Sure, we'll be there.
Absolutely.
So
And
Monday.
audience, I hope you'll be able to come and see it on Monday.
So there's a question for you, Dorian. What was the film you did with the rock song and the girl dancing in the sandstorm? That was you, right? Was it?
No, I don't think that was me.
Oh, and we do want to
doesn't
link
sound
these of
like
your
you.
mansplaining.
No, I've got it. I'm just putting it in. That's odd.
It is odd. What is it saying? Invalid YouTube ID. Let me see what I emailed.
Maybe the question mark is at the end of the link? That's
Let's
something.
try it this way. It looks the same. No, it looks slightly different.
No, that's definitely different.
Yeah, that's just the link from on top of my browser versus the share button, so
Right.
let's try the second one.
Yeah, this should work. Starting to matter now.
Yeah, me too, Fire. Looking forward, well, also to tomorrow. If you guys want to show your films on the screen and talk about it, come tomorrow. Bring your movies and celebrate.
Available for everybody to watch. I don't know why it's not.
No, I can see it on YouTube.
There it goes.
Here we go.
There it goes.
So, all click on the link then.
And remember, don't hate me, hate the character. We're doing a countdown, or is everyone already watching?
We're watching.
Oops, sorry. You're gonna love wandering around the fantasy fair. We can meander around the sites using something called an experience. Let me go first, so you'll know it's safe. Wait, come back. Oh look, there are giraffes. An interesting fact, they have very long necks so they can eat from the high trees. Ah, well, how wonderful! A parade of giraffes and boats. Do you remember what I told you about those elegant creatures? Now look at these ruins. What these need is a lady's touch, of course. Remember when I showed you how to conquer dust? Look at all this beautiful water. I can't wait to show you the underwater kingdom, just as soon as I've taught you how to swim. Why isn't that a pretty tree? Now do be careful. The step down is far too steep for your tiny feet. Here, take my hand. A magical rainbow bridge. Ladies love these. Did you know that a rainbow is an arc of colors caused by the refraction of light by rain? Oh, I'm sorry. So what refraction means is exactly what's going on in that lovely little head of yours. How do these float in the air like this? It's all right. I'll explain. An opera of work was done here. Did you know the Italian word opera means work? Down these stairs, there are some wonderful stalls with merchants selling marvelous objects and curiosities. I know how much you ladies love your trinkets and baubles. Many cities are built along the sea. You see, boats are very useful for trading, hunting, and travel. Oh my goodness, there's a strong magical atmosphere here. Stay close to me. I'll keep you safe while you shop. Such wonderful banners. They're not just for show, you know. Now, I should explain why banners are unfurled. You see, so many levels and shops here. You see anything you like, let me know. I have a friend who'll get it cheap for you. All this snow. Your dress is very pretty, but you need something more practical. Function over fashion, my dear. Another frosty one. Do you know what frostbite is? There's no reason you should. Let me tell you about it. It's not easy being green, which of course is the color of spring, and the color of happy frogs that love pigs. No, really, that's a thing. All this fungi. That's what they call mushrooms, you know. I'll show you which ones are safe, which are fun, and which are deadly. This is a big city, so remember, like I told you, look pretty and smile. I'll do the talking. And here, my love, is where we can watch all our travels showcased on film.
Ahí suma sheraftiwa. Ahí si taricamo Anglaterra.
Yay.
Yes, that was
It was
great.
a lot of fun to make.
Okay, well, Laura and Vicky, thank you so much for coming today. It's
Thank you for
great.
having
Thank you
us.
for having us.
It's been really interesting.
Very.
Yeah, carry it on and Mission Monday. Right, and I'm going to invite Boudica to come up on stage now, because she's going to be reading to us.
Good.
Thank you everyone for coming. I hope you'll stay and hear Boudica, or a goodly proportion of you. And can I also ask you, if you've enjoyed it, or even if you haven't, to drop some lindens in the kiosk.
And go out filming. film your
Yeah.
way there. Let's see what you all come up with.
Okay. And hello, Boudica. Aha! You've got voice, good.
Hello. I hope everyone. Yes. Well, thank you for being here. Hope you're enjoying the fair. I haven't had a look round yet, but I shall be doing so in the next week or so. I'm going to be reading from Skandar and the Unicorn Thief by A.F. Stedman. The cameraman heard the unicorns before he saw them. High-pitched, screeching, murderous growls, the gnashing of bloody teeth. The cameraman smelled the unicorns before he saw them. Rancid breath, rotting flesh, the stench of immortal death. The cameraman felt the unicorns before he saw them too. Somewhere deep in his bones their putrid hooves thundered, and the panic began to rise, until every nerve, every cell told him to run. But he had a job to do. The cameraman watched the unicorns emerge over the brow of the hill. 8 of them. Malevolent ghouls galloping across the grassland, skeletal wings unfurling, taking flight. Like the eye of a shadowy storm, black smoke swirled around them, thunder rumbled in their wake, and bolts of lightning hit the earth far below their fearsome feet. 8 ghostly horns sliced through the air as the monsters howled their war cry. The villagers began to scream. Some tried to run, but it was far, far too late for that. The cameraman was standing in the village square when the first unicorn landed. It snorted sparks and pawed the ground, havoc and mayhem in every rattling breath. The cameraman kept filming, despite his shaking hands. He had a job to do. The unicorn lowered its giant head, the razor-sharp horn pointing directly at the lens. Its bloodshot eyes met the cameraman's, and he saw in them only destruction. There was no hope for this village now. No hope for him. But then, he'd always known he wouldn't survive a wild unicorn stampede. He just hoped the camera footage would make it to the mainland, because once you see a wild unicorn, you're already dead. The man lowered his camera, hoping that his job was done. Because unicorns don't belong in fairy tales. They belong in nightmares. Chapter 1. The Thief. Skandar Smith stared at the unicorn poster opposite his bed. It was light enough outside now to see the unicorn's wings outstretched mid-flight, shining silver armor covering most of his body, exposing only his wild red eyes, an enormous jaw, and a sharp grey horn. New Age Frost had been Skandar's favourite unicorn ever since his rider, Aspen McGrath, had qualified for the Chaos Cup 3 years ago. And Skandar thought that today, in this year's race, they just might have a chance of winning. Skandar had received the poster for his 13th birthday, 3 months before. He'd gazed at it through the bookshop window, imagining that he was New Age Frost's rider, standing just outside the poster frame, ready to race. Skandar had felt really bad asking his dad for it. For as long as he could remember, they'd never had much money. He didn't usually ask for anything. But Skandar had wanted the poster so badly, and... A crash came from the kitchen. On any other day, Skandar would have jumped out of bed, terrified there was a stranger in the flat. Usually he, or his sister Kenna, asleep in the bed opposite, was in charge of making breakfast. Skandar's dad wasn't lazy. It wasn't that. He just found it hard to get up most days, especially when he didn't have a job to go to. And he hadn't had one of those in a while. But today was no ordinary day. Today was race day. And for Dad, the Chaos Cup was better than birthdays, better even than Christmas. Are you ever going to stop staring at that stupid poster? Kenna groaned. Dad's making breakfast, Skandar said, hoping this would cheer his sister up. I'm not hungry. She turned and faced the wall, her brown hair poking out from underneath the duvet. There's no way Aspen and New Age Frost will win today anyway, by the way. I thought you weren't interested. I'm not, but... Kenna rolled back again, squinting at Skandar through the morning light. You've got to look at the stats, Scar. Frost's wing beats per minute are only about average for the 25 competing. Then there's the problem of their allied element being water. What problem? Skandar's heart was singing, even though Kenna was insisting Aspen and Frost wouldn't win. She hadn't talked about unicorns for so long, he'd almost forgotten what it was like. When they were younger, they'd argued constantly about what their elements would be if they became unicorn riders. Kenna always said she'd be a fire wielder, but Skandar could never decide. Have you forgotten your hatchery classes? Aspen and New Age Frost are water allied, right? And there are 2 air wielders among the favourites, Emma Templeton and Tom Nazari. We both know air has advantages over water. Skandar's sister was leaning on one elbow now, her thin, pale face alight with excitement, her hazel hair and eyes wild. Kenna was a year older than Skandar, but they looked so similar that they'd often been mistaken for twins. You'll see, Skandar said, grinning. Aspen's learned from her other Chaos Cups. She won't just use water, she's smarter than that. Last year she combined the elements. If I was riding New Age Frost, I'd go for lightning bolts and whirlpool attacks. Kenna's face changed at once. Her eyes dulled. The smile dropped from the corners of her mouth. Her elbow collapsed, and she turned to the wall again, gathering her duvet around her shoulders. Ken, I'm sorry, I didn't mean... The smell of bacon and burnt toast wafted under the door. Skandar's stomach rumbled into silence. Kenna? Leave me alone, Scar. Aren't you going to watch the cup with me and Dad? No answer again. Skandar dressed in the half-light of the morning, disappointment and guilt tightening his throat. He shouldn't have said it, if I was riding. They'd been talking like they used to, before Kenna took the hatchery exam, before all her dreams came crashing down. Skandar entered the kitchen to the sound of sizzling eggs and blaring early cup coverage. Dad was humming, leaning over the pan. When he saw Skandar, he gave him an enormous grin. Skandar couldn't remember the last time he'd seen him smile. Dad's face fell a little. No Kenna yet? Still sleeping, Skandar lied, not wanting to spoil his good mood. She'll find this year hard, I expect. The first race since... Skandar didn't need him to finish the sentence. This was the first Chaos Cup since Kenna had failed the hatchery exam last year and lost all chance of becoming a unicorn rider. The trouble was, Dad had never acted like it was rare to pass the hatchery exam. He loved unicorns so much he was desperate for one of his children to become a rider. He said it would fix everything. Their money problems, their future, their happiness, even the days he couldn't get out of bed. Unicorns were magic, after all. So for Kenna's whole life, he'd insisted that she'd pass the exam and go on to open the hatchery door on the island, that she was destined for a unicorn egg locked inside, that she'd make their mum proud. And it hadn't helped that Kenna had always been top of her hatchery class at Christchurch Secondary. If anyone was going to get to the island, her teacher said, it was Kenna Smith. Then she'd failed. And for months now, Skandar's dad had been telling him the same, that it was possible, probably even inevitable, that he'd become a rider. And despite knowing how unusual it was, despite seeing Kenna so disappointed last year, Skandar wanted more than anything for it to be true. Your turn this year, Harry? Dad ruffled Skandar's hair with a greasy hand. Now, the best way to make fried bread. As Dad gave him instructions, Skandar nodded in all the right places, pretending he didn't already know how. Other children might have found this annoying, but Skandar was just pleased when Dad gave him a high five for getting the bread the perfect amount of crispy. Kenna didn't come out for breakfast, though Dad didn't seem to mind too much as he and Skandar munched on sausages, bacon, eggs, beans and fried bread. Skandar stopped himself asking where the money for this extra food had come from. It was race day. Dad clearly wanted to forget all about that, and Skandar did too, just for today. So he grabbed the brand new bottle of mayonnaise and squeezed it over everything, grinning as it made a satisfying squelch. Aspen McGrath and New Age Frost still favourites for you then? Dad asked through a mouthful. I forgot to say, if you want to invite any friends over for the race, that's fine with me. Lots of kids do that, don't they? Don't want you to miss out. Skandar stared down at his plate. How could he even begin to explain that he didn't have any friends to invite? And worse, that it was sort of Dad's fault. The trouble was that looking after Dad when he wasn't well, not so happy, meant that Skandar missed out on a lot of the normal stuff you were supposed to do to make friends. He could never stay after school to mess about in the park. He didn't have pocket money to go to the amusement arcade or sneak off for fish and chips on Margate Beach. Skandar hadn't realised to begin with but those were the times people actually made friends. Not in English class, or over a stale custard cream at morning break. And looking after Dad meant that Skandar sometimes didn't have clean clothes, or hadn't had time to brush his teeth. And people noticed. They always noticed and remembered. Somehow, for Kenna, it hadn't been as bad. Skandar thought it helped that she was more confident than him. Whenever Skandar tried to think of something clever or funny to say, his brain jammed. It had come to him a few minutes later, but face to face with a classmate, it'd just be a weird buzzing in his head, a blankness. Kenna didn't have that problem. He'd once heard her confront a group of girls whispering about how weird Dad was. My dad, my business, she'd said very calmly. Stay out of it, or you'll be sorry. They're busy with their own families, Dad, Skandar mumbled, feeling himself blush, which always happened when he didn't tell the whole truth. Dad didn't notice, though. He started stacking the plates, which was such a rare sight that Skandar blinked twice to make sure it was real. What about Owen? He's a good mate of yours, isn't he? Owen was the worst. Dad thought he was a friend because he'd once seen hundreds of notifications from him on Skandar's phone. Skandar hadn't mentioned that the messages were far from friendly. Oh, yeah, he loves the Chaos Cup. Skandar got up to help. He's watching it with his grandparents, though, and they live miles away. Skandar wasn't even making this up. He'd overheard Owen complaining to his crew about it. Right before he'd torn 3 pages out of Skandar's maths textbook, screwed them up and thrown them in his face. Kenna! Dad shouted suddenly. We're starting any minute. When there was no answer, he disappeared into their bedroom, and Skandar sat down on the sofa, the TV coverage in full swing. A reporter was interviewing a past Chaos Cup rider in the main arena, just in front of the starting bar. Skandar turned up the volume. And do you think we'll see some fierce elemental battles today? The reporter's face was flushed with excitement. For sure, the rider replied, nodding confidently. There's a real mix of abilities among the competitors, Tim. People are fixating on the fire strength of Federico Jones and Sunset's blood. But what about Emma Templeton and Mountain's Fear? They might be air allied, but they're multi-talented. People forget that the best Chaos Cup riders excel in all 4 elements, not just the one they're allied to. The 4 elements. They were the core of the hatchery exam. Skandar had spent hours learning which famous unicorns and riders were allied to fire, water, earth or air, which attacks and defences they would favour in sky battles. Nerves swooped into Skandar's stomach. He couldn't believe the exam was the day after tomorrow. Dad returned, a troubled look on his face. She'll be out in a minute, he said, sitting next to Skandar on the battered old sofa. It's hard for you kids to understand, really, he sighed, staring at the screen. 13 years ago, when my generation first watched the Chaos Cup, it was enough just knowing the island existed. I was far too old to be a rider, but the race, the unicorns, the elements, it was magic for us. For me, for your mum. Skandar stayed very still, not daring to turn his head away from the screen as the unicorns entered the arena. Dad only talked about Skandar and Kenna's mum on Chaos Cup Day. By his 7th birthday, Skandar had given up asking questions about her any other time. He'd learned that it made Dad angry and upset. Learned it made him disappear into his room for days. Never seen your mum so full of emotion as she was on the day of the first Chaos Cup, Dad continued. She sat right where you are now, smiling and crying and holding you in her arms. Only a couple of months old you were. Skandar had heard this before, but he didn't mind one bit. He and Kenna were always desperate to hear about their mum. Grandma, Dad's mum, used to tell them about her. but they liked it best when the stories came from Dad, who'd loved her most.